let's jump into, I know where your passion is out. Let's talk about like customizing drip jobs, making it your own, and actually building that sales process out.
Yeah.
So I think there are, for me, and you may have something to add on this, but for me, I think there's 3 core elements that every pipeline, the sales pipeline, not jobs pipeline or something else, but the sales pipeline needs to have. We need to have at least a couple stages for leads, at least a couple stages for like appointments, and at least a couple stages for the bid proposal part of the process. But and Drip Jobs has that out of the gate. That's where it starts. So that's kind of, you've already identified that, you've already had it. And I'm only mentioning this part for the people that are not cool enough to be on Drip Jobs. They're using something else. There's a couple of those out there, right? But if you're building your own from scratch with some other third-party tool, you still need to have these. Like they must be there. You're going to have leads come in, and you have to communicate them and try to drive them to an appointment. And then you request an appointment, direct booking, whatever you have, or you take it over the phone, doesn't matter, some sort of mechanism to get an appointment, then remind them of the appointment. Then you're going to go to them and meet the homeowner, do your measurements, do your walkthroughs, do all that stuff. And you're ultimately going to have a proposal and a price and try to close that deal. Those are 3 elements that I think are unarguable that they need to be there.
It's interesting because when I first started Drip Jobs, the core component was sales, right? Lead nurturing, opportunities, following up with proposals. And then when we were building, I was up in the mountains of Georgia, and I had this epiphany. It's amazing when you go to the mountains, your ideas start to flow, the mental clarity, man. And this is when I had the first development team build it. And I'm like, you know what? We should split up the pipeline and make 2 pipelines and have one for jobs. And I thought, you know what, man, there is room for drip communication at the job level. And and I didn't really consider it until we were building, but I love that aspect of it as well. So I'd feel like, if there's one thing that I feel like could be added here, it'd be the job component and how valuable drip communication is there. Case in point, up north, when I was doing demos of Drip Jobs, we'd run into a lot of people that had to navigate the winter months. And one of their strategies was to sell jobs sometimes 4 to 6 months in advance, right? So this, as I'm learning this, and one of my questions was, well, do you communicate with that customer from the time you sell the job till the time that you actually get close to doing it? And they say, well, no, not really. We usually just call them a couple weeks before it's time. And then,
that loses that momentum you were talking about.
They forget about you. So you can use them to build up that excitement and create a couple drip messages that say, hey, get ready. We're hoping to get started here soon. If you have any questions, let us know, and build out a sequence just for them. So much opportunity there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely, I had designed these slides talking about mainly the sales side of the pipeline, but you're 100% right. And I actually do that too. So like in my CRM, unfortunately, I can't use Drip Jobs because it's more contractor focused, but I have 2 pipelines. I have a sales pipeline and then I have a client pipeline. And I do the same thing. Like once someone comes on, there's like a welcome to be in a Search Click Grow client. And here's what to do next. Here's how to book your kickoff call and get started. And then there's literally like phases for week 1 and week 2 and week 3 and week 4, all the way down. Like here's the things that we're doing this week. And you know what I mean? And it just streamlines and professionalizes those communications. Yeah. Well, I think when you look at one of the big things to do when you're talking about customizing the drips is I get a lot of clients like, hey, I want to customize this pipeline, and I know you've helped some other people, and I see some other people with these cool things, and they're like, what do I do? I think the first thing for me when we think about customizing is to start by taking a look at the sales process you currently have.
Right.
For example, the client that I was talking about that has one of their admins call people for like 10 days in a row. What we did is we created like a day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 thing. And so they could just move their leads. Oh, I called them there in the next day. They called them there the next day. And so now there's like a visual representation of what their sales team is actually doing. So for me, I think the very first thing that before we try to customize anything is to just take a look at what you're doing. And maybe your sales process needs work, maybe it doesn't, but just start there. What are you actually doing, or what do you want that process to look like? And then once we have that, now we have the kind of the basis of what to do. And then from there, I go into And I said this earlier, I think hierarchically, and it's not for everyone, but it's the way that I work. I start by creating an outline. And I don't like to go into any CRM and start creating stages and writing emails and writing text. I want to see an outline first, personally. And so I'll say, here, step one, it's this, step two is this, step three is this. And I write it in very easy, human, understandable terms. And then underneath each one of those, I decide what is the intent of this stage? What is the condition that gets them there? And what are the actions needed to get them out of the stage? And all CRMs pretty much have this. Like, think about like estimate requested. Okay. It has a name, clear name. It's very easy to understand. Its intent, well, that's pretty clear. They want an estimate, right? What's the condition? When they click a button or fill out a form to do so. And what's the action required to get them out of that is actually booking the appointment. That gets them out of there and moves them to the next stage. And so you could do that same exact logic for all your custom stages. Where I see people go wrong is they start making custom stages without defining these things. And then it just becomes a cluster. It's like nonsensical. Right. It's overly complicated. It ends up causing more confusion than helping. And so for me, when I'm building out CRM stages, I don't put any of them in place unless I can define these things. What are your thoughts on that? How do you define custom stages?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, I look at it like, am I currently doing something that I can automate? Or, you know, like, or is the, you know, really, or is somebody, you know, or are we missing an element of our process that could create a better experience? It's unlimited, you know? So for me, here's an example. I'm giving another job example, but this is just the easiest one I can think of. We do paint jobs, and all my customers have to submit colors, every one of them. And that's like a thing that like we can't escape as a painting business. So one of the stages that I put in my system was the colors stage. So we identify who submitted their colors. And then once they move to that stage, we send them that email that says, hey, we received your colors. Thank you. Right? Like, it's one of those things that creates a better experience. So the name is colors confirmed. The intent is to create another touch point in the production process and to confirm that we received it, right? How many times do you get an email or a text message? Did you receive my colors? That's like a high stress point for a homeowner, because they have to make sure you got the right colors, and they got to make sure you received them. That's important. Don't ghost those people, right? And I find myself ghosting them, like, let me review it. Or so I'm like, you know what, let me just automate this. I'll just go to Drip Jobs, move it over. They get an email. They're happy. I'm happy. And what's great is, and I know that there's some contractors that have ran into this, is that I don't question whether or not I have someone's colors, because I have it there and it helps me identify that that customer's ready to go. And I can't tell you, before this, there's been some times where I had to start a job and I was like, they didn't even pick their colors yet, and you can't start. Right. So that solved that problem. The condition of that is, of course, they need to get, they need to hire us, and they need to be scheduled to get there. And of course, the actions that take place are what I just mentioned. So that's the easiest example I can give you. And we can find many of those within both sides.
Well, and I think, and we're going to get into this too, because we're talking about some custom automations in a minute. But one of the things, and I'm sure you're probably already doing that, but you know, you can use Zapier for different stages too. In addition to the built-in emails and stuff and text that are built in, you can start using Zapier. So you could be like, when someone is in that stage, like colors are picked, you could like alert you or a crew lead through a Zap and be like, cool, colors are done. Awesome. Jane Smith just picked her colors.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It starts getting real fun right there.